Hey, everybody. Howdy. Starting a little bit early, of course. I do not intend to run an hour and 10 on this, so don't worry. I had a couple of people fall asleep on me last year, and I think that was super reasonable considering the nature of last year's talk. So hopefully I'll keep you guys going a little bit more. This will be the first time that I'm talking about really modern things. We're going to dig into the history a little bit, of course, because that's where I draw a lot of my context from. But more and more, I have been thinking about what it means to feel safe, what it means to be secure, what it means to be a consumer of security when you live in a situation of minimal risk. And the fact is, the gross majority of end users, of consumers, either aren't at critical risk on a regular basis, or the consequences of becoming victimized are so smoothed by other important parts of our society. And the fifth time that you get your credit card reissued in a year because they caught whatever stupid thing happened to you before you lost all of your money, those sorts of things are smoothing out a lot of the consequences for victimization. As a result, we're pretty safe. Yes, absolutely, there are swords of Damocles hanging over our heads, but when you're trying to sell to consumers, it's a much harder sell than it used to be, particularly in America, particularly right now. So, this talk is going to be about selling security in a post-lock society. And I'm not being glib with the post-lock part. We'll dig into that as well. I'm Schuyler, Towne, in case you don't know me. I'm really big into locks, pretty super into locks, so a lot of this talk is going to focus around locks, and it had lock in the title. I wasn't joking about that. It's all about locks. But historically, here at RVAsec and other conferences, I kind of dig into the mechanical side of things, and I try to throw as much on the shore as I can so that you guys can draw whatever conclusions and whatever metaphors you can from it. Hopefully something useful. So, previously at RVA, 2012, I gave the talk, Why Do You Lock Your Door? And in this talk, I tried to make a strong argument for the social and emotional nature of security, that there is a deeper connection to security than most people realize as they're moving through their lives, that trespass, whether against or you trespassing someone else, has a physiological effect, that you really feel it in the gut, that your heart is invested in security even if you have no idea that it is. This is going to come up again today. In 2013, I gave the talk Vulnerability Research Circa 1851, in which I tracked the rise and decline of perfect security. The death of perfect security changed a lot of things. I talked about that in depth in 2013, and this is going to come up once again. And finally, last year, I explained how to make a lock from first principles all the way back to as far back as I could start making locks and trying to explain all of the different things that go into designing a lock. And one of the things that we kept coming back to, slide after slide after slide, of getting a new format, a more convenient format, something easier to use, all sorts of convenience and even regulatory considerations that take place that have nothing to do with making something more secure, but are an enormous force on the security industry, and one that could probably compromise with in more effective ways. So, all of this is going to come back up again today. There are four big tenets here. The first is that community is security. When I started thinking about the post-lock world that we may or may not be in, I realized that I was about to spend a significant amount of time studying how people feel about security who don't have to worry about security. Like the data says they don't have to worry about it, the logic says they don't have to worry about it. How do they live with the idea of security, the idea of trespass, how they protect themselves, how they protect other people, so on and so forth. And it is I'm investigating white, relatively wealthy suburbia a lot of the time. I am talking to people who have never taken the time to think about these things before in their lives because they have not had to. And this massive segment of people who are completely disconnected from an active role in their own security have some interesting norms that wouldn't have occurred to me previously. So I proposed formal debates at conferences a while back, and I'm pretty stoked that RVA are going to be doing the speed debates tomorrow. I am thrilled to attend those. I wanted to find someone to debate me on the fact that we are living in a post-lock age, and that I would take all comers. The offer still stands, but it has to be an American, because the British are not living in a post-lock age, which is a whole other talk that you can get into with me at the table tomorrow. The reason that I say this is coming out of 1851, like 3 days after my last talk ended, back in history, literally 1851, there was this amazing editorial that I found where the person quite poetically and quite earnestly suggested that now that perfect security was dead, now that we all knew that the locks could be opened, now that we all knew that we were all securing ourselves behind locks that we knew how to open, perhaps our mutual vulnerability would create mutual empathy. That perhaps we were emerging into a post-lock age and we would be a better society as a result of it. When I first read that 5-ish years ago, I thought it was hilarious, because I was like, oh man, locks are everywhere, billion-dollar industry, still, worldwide, nobody lives without locks. The very rare exceptions that I could find to people living without locks were enormous outliers. And yet, it was really burning me. As a matter of fact, I was giving a talk elsewhere, and I was telling the anecdote about this guy's editorial and saying, oh, and I laughed at it, and it was that moment on stage that I thought, wait a minute, I think he might be right. So I said so in that talk. I had no idea how to back it up. I didn't know what I was thinking, what this might lead to, but it was a moment of genuine, not inspiration, but genuine curiosity, and I wanted to challenge myself by saying it publicly. So then I said it publicly again on Twitter, and I have some people that are attempting to take me up on it. So the reason this has come to a head recently is I did a show called Going Deep with David Rees on Nat Geo. Cool show, we talked about locks. My segment wound up being very short and really nicely done and edited and funny and great. I think that they did an awesome job. I shot with them for half of a day, and for about 2 hours of that was just a conversation between me and David in front of a pile of locks. And I can talk for much longer than 2 hours about locks and all of the weird things that I think about locks and so on and so forth. And we were talking about the social nature of them. We were talking about how mechanical keys have been encoding information, that they're your passwords and so on and so forth. All of these interesting, subtle, nuanced ideas, because he was so excited. He was thrilled at all of the ideas. And at the moment that I said, people approach me all the time and they say, oh, where I grew up, we didn't have to lock our doors, nobody locked their doors, blah, 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 blah. And I will say to them, yes, but an unlocked door is just an unused lock. It is no testament to the security of your community. If you really want to show that off, if you really want to demonstrate the security of your community, remove the locks from your doors. Just don't have locks. And as I was about to say to him, but nobody ever takes me up on that, but that's a step too far, or whatever I was going to say, as I opened my mouth, he said, oh my God, let's do that. Let's go take the lock off my door. Let's see how long it takes people in my neighborhood to notice. Let's see how it makes them feel to find out that I'm living without a lock. Let's see how it feels to me to come home with no lock on my door. And he just approached it with such excited enthusiasm that he completely bowled me over. And I started to wonder if anybody else out there, unfortunately, he had just gotten a roommate that was not involved in this conversation. So I blame him not at all for not going through with this. As a matter of fact, I think that it was incredibly exciting that he approached it with that much enthusiasm, and it completely inspired the next year of sort of side research for me. So I began wondering if there's anybody else like David Rees out there who would be willing to go completely lockless, no lock on the door whatsoever. And then, like right as I'm starting to think about this, I got a coupon for Google Consumer Surveys. So I was like, well, I'll just ask a bunch of people if they're willing to do it. And the survey was terrible. The survey data, I am not going to show it to you. The survey data is awful. You should not believe the number I am about to show you, because I was really bad at composing surveys at that moment in time. I learned a lot. Some friend tried to help me, but we combined the data of the two surveys. It's all a complete disaster, and the following information is absolutely inaccurate, but I'm going to show you anyway. I asked people if they could feel safe without locks at all. I also asked them if they wanted more locks. I also asked them how they liked their locks. I asked them way too many things about locks. But the people who decided that they could feel safe without locks at all, taking the data from both surveys, the one that was slightly more rigorous and my complete disaster of a survey, gonna edit the video right here. I'm still plugged in. Does anybody know what's up with the feed? You're getting it back there? What was that? Oh yeah, the lamp isn't on. Not a bad thing that we started early, eh? What was that? Yeah, can't even show you the damn data. That was such a reveal, too. That was such a, like, here it is. Killed the projector. What else can I tell you guys in the meanwhile? Stuff about locks. I'm trying to think about the stuff about locks that isn't this talk. I've been so focused. I just ran my timings like 3 times on this talk, which is when this would happen, of course, which is fine. I'm starting to work on another thing. I'm going to vamp on this for a minute because it's interesting research. It's completely new to me. As I said, I intend to have somebody cut this section out of the video until we get up into here, so not at all for distribution yet, but I'm starting to investigate a theory that locks come before all other societal structures of security. I have a couple of, you guys can interrupt me if you need my help to do anything. Just let me know. I'm vamping. It's good vamping, though. I have a couple of points of data on this. I have a couple of interesting areas of investigation. Fantastic gentleman whose name that I don't remember, and I would look it up, but I'm afraid of touching anything over here. Wrote this amazing paper studying Tel-E Bakun A, T-E-L-L, I think, -E, Bakun, B-A-K-U-N. I don't know why I thought that one would be the thing that you knew how to spell. And A was the specific period of this particular excavation. And there, he discovers for the first time, thank you guys. I'll finish that one thought, and then I will hop back over here. He discovers for the first time the first door seals that we've ever seen, the first time people are sealing doors, and he makes a beautiful, intelligent, and I think super strong argument for the door seal being the transitional technology between a tribal society and a civilized society. And then the 1851 stuff. Anyway, maybe I'll be back next year talking about that. So, I'm gonna do that. So I asked people if they could feel safe without locks at all. I also asked them how they liked their locks. I asked them if they wanted more locks. I asked them way too many things about locks, and so the data's awful, but putting my survey together, putting the other survey together, 3 to 7% of respondents suggested that they could feel comfortable living without locks at all. Again, that isn't true. This is terrible data. Please don't trust this. But man, it's interesting, even though I know it can't be verified and I need to do this again at some point in time and so on and so forth. But man, I was like sitting in a bar getting the responses, and I was like, oh man, I must have screwed this up badly. And I did. It turned out I did. I'll get off of this rant. Anyway, but so exciting and so curious that there might be this much of a significant percentage of people in America. Again, this is an American thing at the moment. It's probably a Canadian thing. But I'm focused on America, that there are these people that might be willing to take the locks off their doors, that might actually feel that strong in their community, self, the lack of consequences, whatever it is that's making them feel safe, it isn't locks. And there were a bunch of other respondents that basically confirmed that there is a big minority of people who don't see locks as anything that keeps them safe. So even if they're not willing to remove the locks from their door, they still don't trust the lock on their door. They trust other things in their environment. They haven't had to think about it. They're not sure how to express it. I went and verbally interviewed several people, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So, I then thought about David's other question. How would someone feel if they found out I was living without locks? And what a great question. This isn't what I expected. I asked people if they would feel less safe, more safe, or neutral. Got a lot better at my options. The question is, if a neighbor told you they had decided to live without any locks on their home, would you feel less safe, more safe, or neutral? Neutral, of course, was the majority. Their responses were a little less interesting. But 25% of respondents felt less safe as a result of a neighbor ceasing to use locks. I'll explain why in a minute. But that blew my mind. I was really surprised by that. So we pushed further. We turned that one into a multiple. And I say we because I had people helping me at this stage. If several neighbors told you that they had decided to live without any locks on their homes, would you feel 36% would feel less safe as a result of the defection of their neighbors? Of their neighbors defecting against the norm, it would make them in their home feel less safe. Now, when I started seeing this pouring in and that it was this significant a number of people, oh, by the way, we should talk about the more safe people too. Because I feel like there's a decent number of more safe people out here who just think, oh man, there's an easier target than me now, great. You don't think like the less safe people, and I'll explain the difference. My initial thought about the less safe people was that they were probably thinking, oh, this is inviting trouble. This is the, broken windows theory, that if we let things go to heck, then we're inviting trouble into our neighborhood, so on and so forth. And I thought maybe this is what the perception is. Admittedly, I haven't, manually, verbally, in-person interviewed the entire response group. I haven't even interviewed anybody that was in this, of course, because this is all anonymous. But as I continued this, as I asked people personally, as I, got a hold of strangers that I was able to see immediately in front of me, and I've had these conversations, I've met a lot of less safes. A lot of people that feel less safe as a result of this, and none of them are telling me that they think it's inviting trouble. There is a significant minority of people whose sense of their personal security encompasses their community. I'm going to use my mother as an example. My mother is in her late 60s now. She's a delight. She still, shovels the driveway. We're an old Vermont farming stock. Love her to death. She knew that a neighbor was on a trip some winter, and we were in the safest little suburb of the tiniest charming town. But she went, because we had a sudden blizzard, she went and she blew out their entire driveway and their walk to their door and swept off the walk so it would look like they were home. Hours of effort because of an unexpected snowstorm. And I don't know that she even speaks to these people on a regular basis, but they're her neighbors. She might. I'm sorry, Mom, if you do. And the people that I talked to that were in the less safe camp, this is what they said to me over and over again. I would be more on watch. What I was getting from them was less that they would feel less safe, but more that they would have to be on guard now. And they didn't have to be before this question was asked. That they had to watch out for their neighbors. That their security was completely tied to their community. The more safes as we said, got to be safer for them if some other idiot is living without locks. You know, they're the easiest path, the path of least resistance for somebody that wants to cause trouble. And the neutrals were, again, not as interesting to me, but definitely kind of predictable. It's what I got from a lot of people. Like, it does not matter to me. The locks don't do anything. Security is an illusion. And this occasionally bums me out because if you really need, we can get you serious security. You can invest, you can make it happen. But you know, in a certain way, they're not wrong. And so between the less safes and the security is an illusion people, we have a lot of people that are, I meant to say between the more safes and the security is illusion people, we have a lot of people that are valuing locks less than our other minorities. So we'll circle back to that and why that's important. Number 2 here is that we have nothing to fear. That's not entirely true. This sort of advertisement, this was for a safe. Your house is on fire. This may be the warning cry you hear some night. And they said, you know, if you have our safe in your house, you won't lose your important documents, so on and so forth. And that's how advertising was. That's how marketing was in security and fire safety and in all of that stuff. It was just, things are terrifying and we can help you. That is dramatically less effective now. Dramatically less effective. I don't mean that we actually have nothing to fear. And there are a lot of people that fear a lot of things that logically, by the data, whatever you want to say, they don't necessarily need to fear. I was recently burgled, and that sucked. But it didn't matter all that much. I lost a camera that was important to me for my forensics work. I had to pick glass out of a toilet, which was really annoying. My wife and my in-laws felt awful, and that sucked. I hated that. But I boarded up the window, assessed the other damage they did. They did a lot of damage. It took them quite a few tries to get into my house. I feel good about that. The things that were stolen sucked. Sharing a laptop with my wife because hers was stolen, that was frustrating for a while for both of us. She hates Windows. But we had friends send us pears, really fancy pears from Harry and David right afterwards, and chocolates and mixed nuts. And we had friends that wrote to us and said, hey, let's get together at your house so you guys get to feel more comfortable, so you feel like you own it again. Our insurance company put us in touch with the contractor. Our insurance company is paying what is appropriate for the things that have happened. I went to work the next day. We had 48 hours of feeling a little bit uncomfortable leaving our home alone or having either of us be alone in the home, of course. I had all of you friggin' paranoid hackers saying, man, are you sure you haven't been targeted? Check the place to see if you've been bugged. So that kind of sucked for like 48 hours as I was like, oh, embracing your paranoia. But it was also really weird. I had just finished this project. I was working with the guys at 99% Invisible. We put together an episode on perfect security, on all that 1851 stuff, and I felt like I had put a pin in that. And that went out, and I was so excited, and I arrived home, and I said, oh, babe, why'd you leave the garage door unlocked? She didn't. We walked in together, found out we had been burglared. It's such a surreal experience to be studying this stuff, you know? Anyway, I'm digressing a little bit here, but all I mean to say is that sucked, but I'm not afraid of it happening again. I hate that someone did that, but I'm not afraid of them. I've had a couple of weeks of frustration and annoyance, but I'm not afraid that that's going to be what the rest of my life is about. You know, we keep locking our doors. We replace the lock. We replace the window. We use our sash locks all the time now, so that's good. That was a good thing that we should have been doing. But it's all okay. The consequences of victimization have been smoothed for a lot of us. Not all of us, but for a lot of us. Unless you lie to us. So there are a lot of people trying to sell security that are just lying. I gave Haven Lock the benefit of the doubt when I published my paper last November on the current state of smart locks. They offered a bunch of facts on their website, such as with 95% of break-ins requiring some force, Ours creates a sturdier support system. That's not true. That's not true at all. Look at the FBI crime statistics. Look at the Bureau of Justice statistics. About 2/3 require some amount of force. Sometimes, and often that force is very much related to windows and things that aren't blocked by anything like this. And 2/3 is a hell of a long way from 95%, and they had a couple of other facts on there that were provably false, and it pissed me off. Because I feel like a lot of the other people in this market, a lot of the other smart, hungry, young companies are embracing a lot of the rest of the crap that I'm about to tell you. They're selling to people on convenience. They're selling to people in that social way. They're selling to people great, optimistic feelings about their control over their home. And Haven are still trying to sell with fear. And their crowdfunding failed. I don't think that it was as a result. But selling with fear should be over. Let's cut it out. Paul Gerhardt, CEO of Lockatron, said one of the most beautiful things that I've heard in a long time. He was talking about security. He makes an electronic lock. But he said walls are designed to keep people out. Locks are there to decide who you let in. I love that. I would love to see somebody market a lock to me asking who I want to let in. Showing me my latchkey kid that keeps forgetting his stupid key, and so I never rekey the lock, and everybody in town has my damn key, and I worry about my kid every stupid night because that's something worth being afraid of. But demonstrating to me, not that they're going to be locked out in the cold and that's horrible and you're going to help me, but just showing them coming home and being able to walk right in, watching the door unlock from their dumb smartphone that I shouldn't have bought them because they're only 11, but it's the modern world. I don't have a kid yet. But I'd love to see that. I'd love to see my kid coming home safe because of this new technology that I put on my door. That's a real problem. I'd love to see love. I would love to see love in the marketing of security. Oh my God, particularly home security. How many better feelings are there than when you and your significant other have the key to your first place? That's amazing. Locks are all about love. I want to see a party where everybody that showed up had an invitation that was a key through my door to my amazing party. And I want to see everybody just flowing in. I don't want to be interrupted going to the door and letting every idiot in after idiot after idiot. I want them to be able to roll right in there because I invited every individual one of them and we're having a great time. There are so many great ways to sell me a product without telling me that my kid's going to die out in the cold or that I'm going to be murdered in my sleep. I want somebody to ask me who I'll let in. I want that to be their slogan. I want that to be the way that they want to convince me to use their product. I don't need to be afraid at this point in my life of most security issues, and that is amazing. I know more than a lot of other people that are living not being afraid just because they're completely ignorant of things. I know a lot of stuff. I could be the guy that murders you in your sleep if that's what I wanted to do. I don't. I know that people could do these things, and yet even I don't feel like I need to be afraid. And that's fantastic. That's our society. Those are our communities. Those are all of the other aspects of security that we never think about that are doing a great job. So I don't want to be sold fear anymore. Locks have been sold in a lot of different ways over a very long period of time. Back in the late 1700s and early 1800s, when we were first finally getting really serious locks, it was super novel that a lock would work in a serious way at all. Super novel that you would have a lock that somebody else couldn't open. And they were great. They were miles ahead of anything that had come before. And so, the people making them published every bit of information you could hope to know about these locks. This was a new thing. This was quite novel. You had to inform people. You had to tell them everything about it. And people read about it. People talked about it. People discussed these things. People wrote letters to the editor saying, I'm not sure about this piece of information they gave. And they'd write back and they'd be like, here's all of the info about this piece of information. It was all about information and creating legitimacy for these security products. That's great. Now, those were really bad times. the mid-1700s. It's really the rise of a lot of professional crime. It's the rise of fences in particular, which allow burglary to just explode. And the consumerism of the early 1700s had created the market for the fences, for the burglars, and it was just, the locks hadn't caught up. Policing didn't exist in a real, formal, civilized way yet. None of these things existed until the locks came in. And everybody had to be able to trust them, and the way that they were going to trust them was by getting all of the information. Great. Now things get a little bit better. It's not the bad old days anymore. There's some scary things that happen after 1851 because all of the locks have been picked, but everybody suddenly realizes, even though the locks have been picked, we're all doing pretty okay. This isn't the 1700s anymore. Things are okay. We have professional police. We have, the gas lamps have been here forever. Things are great now. We're not walking and being murdered in the dark every night. It's probably not exactly what the 1700s were like, but it wasn't good. And so now you see a lot of hard branding, a lot of serious branding. Legitimacy in the early 1800s was patents. If you said you have a patent lock, then that information was on file somewhere. You had described it in depth. It was a patent lock. That's good enough. We know that the information is out there. That was an important statement, that this is so-and-so's patent lock. Now, we see people like Yale in particular saying things like, hey, here's the deal. Everybody's making locks. Locks are fine. You need to look for Yale. Look for the Yale name. We make great locks, look for the Yale name, and then you'll definitely be secure. We can't say that all of these other idiots are going to be secure. Look for the Yale name. Yale created massive, massive groundswell in their branding. There's actually interesting case history in trademark law that Yale are directly involved in early on. So this branding and this just trust us, we've got you covered, you don't need to know anything else, we got you covered. This mentality really takes over. I mean, people will literally say, at this point in time, this is when the information starts coming in the room. We don't need to inform you about these things anymore. As a matter of fact, if we inform you about these things, it might even be more dangerous for you. In the early 1900s, in the very late 1800s, this is where that starts to arrive, that if we told you everything, that would be more dangerous for you. And then, honestly, as everything else got better and better and better into the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, price was the primary driver for the consumer. Price and convenience. And weirdly now, even though price and convenience are still incredibly important, by the way, price and convenience are always important through every one of these ages, but they're just the most important thing at that point, all of a sudden, information is becoming a lot more important to us again. The reason that I get really excited about smart locks is not because of the technology behind them. I'm still a purely mechanical guy. But this is yes, thank you very much. But this is the first time that I have seen a wide consumer base excited about locks in my lifetime. It's thrilling how much people want to know about them. So, information is coming back in vogue in a big way. If you look at Popular Mechanics in the 1980s, they were a fantastic source for detailed information about locks. 1970s, 1980s, you could find out everything that you needed to know about interesting high-security locks, how to properly secure the lock to your door if you were doing self-installation. Fantastic information about locks throughout Popular Mechanics during this time. Their circulation at the time was around 1.6 million people over the course of a couple of decades. It fluctuated, but that was around where it was. Bosnian Bill is a fantastic lock picker who has a YouTube channel where he talks about interesting locks. He pulls them apart, he describes them in depth, he picks them, tells everybody everything that he can figure out about this one lock that some rando sent him. On just one of his videos, and a relatively recent one, he has 2.1 million views. And this is one guy on one video, just one channel. The availability of and the desire for information about security is incredible right now. And people's ability to contextualize this information, to process this information, is better than it has been. And I think that it's going to keep getting better, especially as we talk to them more intelligently, especially as we continue to give them enough information so that they can continue to put these things in context. Very interesting to me was when the lock bumping phenomenon blew up, because we very rarely see descriptions in media of entry, of how it works. Now, this isn't the best description. They say lock bumping is done with a bump key, which means you modify a key with deep cuts Then put it in, give it a tap or two, and you're in. This is a super surface understanding of it, fine. They then go on to say, Gene Holder with Holder Security says this works because the vast majority of locks are pin tumbler locks, which means there are 2 sets of tumblers in the lock, and once you tap the bump key, it separates the tumblers so the key then turns. That is so much smarter than I see anybody writing about locks up until this moment. And this is at the outset. This is early in the wave of the brief lock bumping hysteria. And you see more and more accurate, you see cutaways, you see descriptions. People go to YouTube, news channels go to YouTube to see, maybe not Bosnian Bill at the time, because I think that he started his account in 2007 and this was 2006. But you see people drawing content from those of us that are already talking about this stuff and giving incredibly correct descriptions of what's happening so the consumer knows exactly what it is. Now, just because there's more information out there, just because more people desire information, just because people are able to put information in a better context, does not mean that ignorance has gone away. I know that all of you know this. So Aloha, the locksmiths you can trust, part of their logo was added in 2010, sort of at the tail end of the bumping thing when they were having a lot of friction in their community and elsewhere. When people started talking about bumping, when news organizations started talking about bumping, Aloha released a statement saying, we've known about this for 75 years, but we haven't been telling you to protect you. That was what they said. It was 3 paragraphs in a press release, but that's exactly what they were saying. Said, we've known about this for 75 years. We do this, but we weren't going to tell you. And now that these idiots have blown the secret, you are all less safe. If you want to be more safe, trust an Aloha certified locksmith. Trust the brand. Don't figure it out for yourself. So as consumers, of course, we also crave convenience. Like I said, convenience has always been a part of the model of selling security, and it's an important part of it. I want to quickly cover the history of the Kwikset Corporation, because for better or worse, and at many times in their history it was for worse, they were the kings of convenience and security, and I didn't quite realize what an outsized influence they had on the American security consumer until I went back through their history. So, initially they just make a lock that anybody can install, and they do this during the post-World War II housing boom, and they make a ton of money as a result, because now people can slap their own locks on their doors. They don't need a locksmith to come in and install it. Awesome. That's their whole concept. That's their core concept, that normal human beings now are going to be able to install their own locks. And other people had done this, but man, did they pick the right time to come out with a slightly better design than other people when, millions of houses were being built. In '64, they introduced their Quick C packaging, and everybody in their industry is forced to follow suit. This is the first time that you can pick up a lock on the shelf and actually see what the hell is going on inside. See what the parts are, see what the key looks like, see all of that stuff. First time that you're able to do this. And consumers loved it. They loved having access to that and for that immediate visual clarification of what was going on inside of there. And as a result, all of their competitors had to follow suit. You go to Home Depot, you go to Lowe's, whatever, you're going to see inside all of the locks. Not inside the locks, inside their packaging. In '98, they had remote keyless entry for homes. I did not know that. I learned that in the course of putting this together. I'm shocked by that. In 2002, they introduced their Quick Install, which was just a slightly newer version of their already decent install-it-yourself product, but the deal with this one was that all the screws were like pre-together and you just kind of had to twist things in place. And so this is super handy for people, but it was also addressing an important security problem. We'll talk about that in a minute. 2007, they're bringing consumers biometrics. Doesn't go great, but they brought consumers biometrics, and some people loved it, and it's cool, neat, fine. And the smart key. The smart key allows you to rapidly rekey your lock. They were far from the first people to do this. Look back to Lynx, look back to U-Change. There have been designs for changeable locks every time you insert a key back to the early 1800s with super cool lever locks. The paratoptic lock that was central in the Great Lock Controversy of 1851, every time you put a new key in it, it would code itself to that key. It would have to be unlocked at the time to code itself. So this has existed, but once again, man, did they pick a great moment for this to come out with a slightly better design. This was one of the most important things to happen to their company as far as sales and profit are concerned. 2009, they had smart code home automation. They were already rolling into home automation before anybody was using the word smart lock yet. Really interesting that they have constantly tried to be on the leading edge of the wave of convenience specifically. And they've done very well as a result. Looking at how master lock has changed over the years is actually a little more interesting because Kwikset really stayed the course on convenience, always convenience first, always more convenience. Master lock, in their famous 1980 Super Bowl ad, had a rifleman shoot one of their padlocks and then showed that it still couldn't be pulled off the shackle. They were tough. That was their sell. We're tough. Then, in the 90s, this isn't the greatest screenshot, but that's a kid stealing out of another kid's locker. And oh my God, the video for it is fantastic. It is just like sketchy pans of hallways as you, in the POV of the burglar, go through, you see a teacher, you duck away, you steal something out of this kid's locker, steal something out of this kid's locker, and then go to the next one, but you're confronted by a master lock, and another one, and another one. So you should be scared, and master lock will save you. We've heard this. That's fine for 1990. If you check out their newest product offerings, such as the Master Lock Dial Speed, which is a takeoff on the speed dial, which is a really cool lock. Dial speed is fine. The number of things that they advertise that this thing is convenient for, they talk about the 5-year battery life. They talk about the fact that you can start using it right away. They have guest passes so that multiple people can use the same padlock. This is actually a super useful feature. They talk about the fact that it is a one-handed, no-look operation for ease of use. They talk about the ergonomics of it. They talk about how they can back up one of your codes for you in case you forget the combination to the lock. They can back it up online in case you forget, and they can help you out. They also say that it is high security. Once. Just high security. Cool. And afterwards, at the very end, the very last thing they say is, shackle's pretty good too. They say it's, I think, a hardened boron shackle. Awesome. So they bookend it with, we're secure. Check it out, we're secure. And then there are like 10, 15 conversations about convenience and how it will be easy and how it will solve small problems that you've had in implementing security in the past. And for better or worse, however good this lock is, I think that's pretty good. Because we have to believe that convenience and security are not a dichotomy. Sometimes when you force convenience, yes, you're taking a step away from security. But really importantly, inconvenience invites insecurity. This is actually a really clever solution to the problem that it's solving. A lot of different agencies and individuals need access to what this is blocking. So every one of them has their own lock, and they just made a chain out of their locks. But I want to point out to you that this is a master number 3, and this, either of these, I don't know if this is a Medico or not, but these are some serious all-weather, much higher security padlocks, but that doesn't matter because some idiot, someone, put a master number 3 on there, and now, literally, weakest link in the chain situation. It's silly, and it's probably not the right lock for it, but that dial speed has 5 different guest access numbers that you could share between multiple people in a community that needed access to the same space. And then you could have a strong chain, one lock, for better or worse, but at least everybody is on par there. You're not bowing to the weakest member of the team. Inconvenience invites insecurity because everybody has to work around it. They will continue to work around it to make sure that they can continue doing whatever it is that your product was supposed to keep them safe while they were doing. You're never keeping someone safe while they're sitting alone in a dark room. You're keeping them safe while they're trying to do something. And if you keeping them safe constantly interferes with them being able to do that, if every time they wanted this open, someone had to call the Forest Service, who have one of the locks on this chain, to unlock their high security lock, people would start cutting the chain. People would start doing anything but having to call that one guy every single time they needed access or egress. When you are securing people, you are securing them while they try to do something, and you have to pay attention to what that something is. Because if you interfere with it, if you make it inconvenient for them, they will obviate your security. They will find a way to hack around it, and they will make themselves more vulnerable as a result. Some good examples of this. So the QuickSet Smart Key, I said I'd mention it again. People should rekey their locks. You should occasionally rekey your locks. QuickSet introduced home rekeying in 1960. Some people used it, particularly at the time, or DIY action going on. But the Smart Key came out, and now people can rekey their locks in a couple of seconds. I did it immediately after finding out that we were burgled. Even though they weren't able to get into the locks, I went through and I rekeyed all 5 of my locks in approximately 2 minutes. Most of that time was walking from lock to lock. And that made my wife feel that much better. And that meant the world to me. Your latchkey kid does lose his key. Rekey the lock. Costs nothing. It's so easy to do now. Every time like change your password day comes up, I just want to yell, change your lock. Rekey your lock. You've shown your password to your home to a million people today. It's an exaggeration. A lot of people this year, though. Rekey your locks once in a while. So, this is convenience that adds security. It allows people to take part in a secure behavior, and they love it. Word lock. This might seem silly, but word lock is super cool. A lot of people have made, word lock is just a dial combination lock where each of the wheels has different letters on it and you can make words. All right, so people forget their combinations. When people have a combination delivered to them, maybe they forget it at some point in time if they can't change it up themselves. So it's great that you can change your combination. People have been doing that forever. People have been doing make your password a word to this lock since the 1840s. That has existed. What's super cool about word lock is the algorithm. When you buy a word lock, all of those wheels have been chosen, the letters on those wheels have been chosen to give you the maximum number of combinations of real words. Because the problem with word locks before word lock the brand is that the key space was tiny. Yes, you could pick a random combination of letters, but you're not going to do that. You're going to pick a word. It's the whole point. But word lock gave you an enormous key space because they analyzed it, they put the right letters on the right wheels in the right combinations, and it's not all the same. Different word locks will have different combos. It's fantastic, super cool. So this is convenience in all of the ways that word locks have always been convenient, but keeping in mind the security, allowing people to participate in a secure behavior. Residential keypad locks. Again, for better or worse in a lot of ways, but not knowing whether your family has access to their home sucks. I was talking maybe to Solo, was it you? Yes. And he said that he finally gave in and got a keypad lock for his garage, and it felt great. He was trepidatious about it, but it felt great because when he left his house now, he no longer had to worry if he had the key. Could he go out for a run right now? Yes, he's not going to get locked out. His wife isn't going to get locked out because he accidentally grabbed the wrong car keys. I've done this to my wife. We both have our stupid sets of car keys, and I accidentally had both of them at one point in time. It worked out, but it sucks. With the keypad, you just wander in and out. Everybody knows the password. That's great, and it allows people to participate in secure behaviors. So, community is security. If you want to sell security, dig into this area. Dig into the fact that people care beyond themselves, beyond their families, but care about the security behaviors of those in their communities. And don't you dare go trying to scare them about that, but communicate with them about that. We have nothing to fear. Not actually true, but man, it feels true sometimes. It feels true when you're going out to buy a lock. It feels true when you're engaging in other security behaviors, when you're choosing a stupid password that you use everywhere else because you know that your credit card will just get mailed to you in 2 days after it gets compromised. We don't have a lot to fear anymore because a lot of the hard edges have been rounded off, and that's a great thing for society, but pay attention to it when you are trying to sell security. Let them eat info. I'm not saying drown people with info the first time that you talk to them about your product. I'm saying make it available. If you find yourself thinking, man, if I expose this information, it's going to make people less safe, you're probably wrong. You might not be wrong. A lot of you are very smart. No, you're probably wrong. Anyway, if you're thinking, I don't want to do this because they don't deserve to know, that's super wrong. So just give people access. It's friggin' internet. It's so easy. And we crave convenience. We absolutely do. Convenience has to go hand in hand with security, but convenience can enhance security. If your tool isn't convenient, it's going to make people less safe in the end, because they will behave around it, and you are not allowed to get mad at them about that. If you want to sell a lock to me, I want to see that campaign about getting the house for the first time with my wife. I want to see the campaign about throwing that awesome party. I want you to tell me everything about this lock, and I'm not going to read it. But it's going to make me so happy that if I ever needed to read it, I know where to find it. I will trust you more just for telling me where to find the information. I love that. Don't touch fear. Don't go anywhere near it. Tell me how it allows me to engage in a secure behavior while enjoying myself. The people, my parents, when I gave them a touchpad lock, similar experience, but I swear it was the first time they ever thought something I did with locks was at all interesting. And they raved about it. They loved using it. It was fun for them. And they stopped hiding keys behind things on the property, which is awesome. I digress. This is who I am. I'm going to take some questions, and I potentially have a little more survey data to cover if you guys are interested in it about some regulatory stuff. But yeah, that's me. Any questions? Fabulous. I teased you with the survey data. Okay, here we go. All right, so fifth thing, I haven't dug into this enough yet, but be careful with legislating things. Particularly in Europe, we see a lot of interaction between insurance companies and the sorts of locks that you are allowed to have on your home. In England, there have been controversial programs where police will go around trying doors and then reporting to insurance companies when their people are leaving doors unlocked. If it is determined that you left your door unlocked, it is obvious, of course, that you will not get a payout from the insurance company because you invited it. I'll hit you right after this. Thank you. So it's a very different situation. There are a lot of regulations around the standards. The standards that we have in America are, we have a few things about physical resistance. We have a lot of stuff about build quality, but we don't have a lot about actual prevention of access. Nothing about surreptitious stuff really whatsoever. And I think in part that's because we hate regulation. So testing this theory, I asked I passed this Google Consumer Surveys coupon around to a lot of friends, and I was like, ask this question for me, ask this question for me. Got a lot of free data. Thank you very much, Google Consumer Surveys. I swear to God I'll pay for some sometime. You guys are doing fine. Okay, if an organization in your neighborhood or apartment building mandated the use of locks on all residences, and I want to be very clear, the only thing we're asking them is if they mandated that we have locks. Most people have never even imagined, I promise I'll tell you what it says, I'm sorry. Most people have never even imagined going without a lock. And so I'm just asking them that baseline, what if our neighborhood organization mandated that everybody had to have a lock in this community? Almost 50% of people would be supportive of that. About 40% of people would be neutral, and 13% would be opposed to even that level of regulation, just saying they have to have a lock. Now, as we extend this outward, if your town or city proposes this, 41% would be supportive at the town-city level, neutral sitting at 39%, and opposed jumps up to almost 20% now, as we expand further away from the community that we consider part of our realm of security. If your state proposes it, neutral now is winning at 45%. Supportive has dropped all the way down to 33%, and opposed has now finally crossed that 20% threshold. Now, I did go on to ask about what it would be like at the national level, and the script flipped. But I think it might be because I used the word Congress. Word choice is super important, so I do not trust the final data point. But oh man, if you're mandating the use of locks, just the use of locks, not special locks, not certain locks, not locks of a whatever. If you're mandating the use of locks, people are not into that on the national level. Holy crap. But in their own communities, you can get some traction. Okay. That's the next chunk of survey data that I'm going to be digging more into and exploring. I will take your question, but thank you all very much. I appreciate you. Thank you.